6 hours in, I would be like, goodbye.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for Tuesday, February 6, 2024. First, we have approval of the amended agenda. We moved 9D, which is 2 commercial vehicles associated with a home occupation, out of consent agenda, and it is now 10B. Dean, could you please read the appropriate citation for closed session?
It's paragraph 1 of subsection 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Please join us for a moment of silence, and Councilmember Javed, could you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Moving on to public comment time. I see we have 2 folks signed up. Our first speaker is Mr. Kendall Gardner. If you could speak directly into the microphone, state your name, address, and Ms. Connor will time you. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Kendall Gardner. I live at 114 Martin Drive. The reason for me coming up here this evening is I had a little surprise over the weekend. Whenever I had my truck with a trailer in front of my house, and I got a ticket for no inspection on the trailer, which I'll follow up with the DMV on that. I also received that it was a commercial vehicle, which surprised me. And then also that it did not have a sticker, which I have a copy of the sticker. I have a picture of the sticker that was purchased but was not applied to the trailer. The trailer is not mine, it's a neighbor's. It's normally in the city of Manassas parked. It says, just so happened to be that I borrowed it the other night and got a surprise the next day. Besides that, I got a no sticker for my truck. I immediately came down here, put the check in your deposit out there to pay all the stickers for all my vehicles. I specifically noted 2024 because one thing, I did the 2023s, and I'm still showing that those are up on the invoice. And I would like the governing body to give me an idea why, because normally one would go down to the city and inquire. But seeing that I have a no trespass notice against me from the city, and I have for the last year, and that's the reason why I haven't been here, I would like to know, whenever we resolve these things, how do we go to the city to get them resolved and then go to the police department to get that part resolved? That's all I have.
Okay.
Get what resolved specifically with your taxes? You're saying you owed money in 2023 and you believe you don't owe it?
I paid specifically, noted on the paperwork that I submitted, that I was paying the, I guess you call it a parking sticker now?
Okay, you were trying to pay a bill to get your 2024 decal, but you still owed money in 2023, but you wanted the money to go to 2024.
That is correct.
Okay, the treasurer doesn't do that. The treasurer will always apply to the oldest amount owed to the city before applying to you. So you have to come up fully with your balance and pay all your taxes owed before you get that sticker. And then in terms of police,
Then you guys go around and get $250 tickets because people don't have a sticker that has nothing to do with taxes or anything.
okay, so everyone has to be up to date on their tax bills. I don't know what to tell you. You have to pay your taxes. You pay your taxes, you get your sticker, you get in compliance, you don't get a ticket.
Sticker is a parking sticker, not a tax sticker.
That's not accurate, but
What-
Yeah, I have nothing further.
That's all on you- okay.
no, you're confused with the permitted sticker. If you don't have a driveway, you can get a sticker for your commercial vehicle, right? You come in here, apply to the city, you can get a sticker for your commercial vehicle so you can park that on the street. That's a parking sticker. The decal is not a parking sticker.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Mike Smith. Please speak directly into the microphone and state your name, address, and Ms. Connor will time you for 3 minutes.
I always feel like that thing's a little low on the stand there. Mike Smith, 102 Colfax. I've got 2 separate comments tonight. Hopefully I won't go over on my time, but if it happens, it happens. My first comment is on the subject of backyard parking and the parking in general. And this has come up a few times, and I would like to ask once again, while the city is discussing this situation, please consider the irregular lot sizes of the homes on the west side of the city when making your decision. Some of these lots are long and skinny, and some are wide and shallow. Some lots have hills or utility poles or fire hydrants in the yard. And some lots have sidewalks out front, and some do not. Not everyone can put parking behind their homes. Not everyone can put parking out front of their homes. But shouldn't it be fair that all residents have the opportunity to improve their property with sufficient off-street parking to meet the needs of their family? So I'm asking again, and my suggestion for what seems to be the most reasonable solution is to pick a percentage. I know you've tossed some numbers around, 50%, 70%, but make that a percentage of the total lot size and eliminate all of the legacy and conflicting rules. So 70% of the entire lot, for example, should be easy for the city to figure out since we already know the lot sizes. My second comment is on the topic of renaming Manassas Drive. So I know not everyone here is on social media, so for the benefit of some who aren't, there have been several posts on the social media community forums about this topic with hundreds of responses. Nearly all of these responses opposed the name change on Manassas Drive. Some comments by residents include, and I'm quoting here, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Manassas Park has some of the dumbest leaders." And, quote, "This is a slap in the face to all the people that live on the other side of the drive that have been here for way longer than the city center side." Multiple people commented that renaming only a portion of the street would further the division between the old side and the new side. Other residents have commented that the city manager should be fired. There have been a few positive comments, including one that said, "You're doing good things. Don't muck it up with non-issues like this." Sadly, some residents have noted that opinion doesn't really count because I can guarantee even if the votes say not to change, it will change anyway, and it will be the taxpayers paying out the nose for it. And personally, I think it's great to see how many residents have engaged with this issue online. I would hope to see more here at the council meetings, actually in attendance for this and some of the more serious challenges our city is facing. $21,000 would go a long way toward putting up a few stop signs to help with all the speeding. I hope that you would consider other uses for this money before spending it on an unwanted name change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay, at this time, I wanted to provide some details for the public about an issue that's been on our radar for a while, and then I want to pass it over to Councilmember Hampton to share her experiences. For some time now, Old Centreville Road has been plagued with speeding. It's difficult for residents to get in and out of their driveways, and accidents happen. Old Centreville Road is in Prince William County, and therefore it is a VDOT maintained road. Now, since it's not a city street, the city has no authority to make transportation changes of any kind on Old Centreville Road. Prince William County did a traffic study, and the results indicated that Old Centreville Road did not qualify for any transportation changes, any calming measures. So Prince William County Department of Transportation will not be taking any action. Residents of Old Centreville Road were hoping for some type of transportation change. It's possible that Prince William County can do a follow-up study, but it would have to wait at least 12 months between the two studies. So Councilmember Hampton has been in contact with Supervisor Vega's office, so could you please give us a summary of your experiences?
Sure. I actually contacted Supervisor Vega last year, about this time last year, about the increasing issues with Old Centreville Road based on outreach from residents to me. evidently, I guess that maybe that was the cause of the traffic study that was done last year. I reached out to her again in end of January. Did hear back from her at end of January that she was going to talk to the transportation individual at Prince William and get back to me. My initial request was for she and I to meet on one weekend or one afternoon on the corner of Cabell and Manassas Drive to survey the situation. I also provided her with some metrics that the city manager provided me that he got from PD and from fire department that underscored the issue with the number of accidents, the speeding, and other traffic incidents on Old Centreville Road. In addition to that, I went out on a weekend and took pictures showing how bad the view is for folks trying to get in and out of their driveways, as well as coming out of some of the roads like Manassas Drive, not Manassas Drive, but Polk, Cabell, and some others to get on to Old Centreville Road. I will follow up with her because, like I said, that was a week ago this past Sunday, and request, for her to come out and meet with me so we could at least survey it. She could understand. She probably does understand the issue as she was a former police officer here in Manassas Park, but underscore the issue. And maybe, we're at the mercy of Prince William County, but maybe that will spur some sort of measure. In addition to that, anybody that's driven down Old Centreville Road can attest to the number of folks, especially that part that's between Cabell and Polk, the number of folks that jaywalk. And I will tell you, if you're coming there at night or in the morning, it's very dangerous because many folks are wearing dark clothes, and it's just we're just very fortunate that no one's been hit just yet. So more to come.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone who was not signed up but who would still like to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, we will move on to 5A, public hearing. Our public hearing is an amendment to the commercial vehicle ordinance to correct some verbiage in the ordinance. I declare the public hearing open.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. This public hearing and ordinance amendment is just more of a cleanup. So when we had our meeting on November 14th, we discussed about amending. Councilmember Dept was concerned about certain non-commercial vehicles, what we define as large non-commercial vehicles here. The weight used to be 9,000. I recommended increasing it to 10,000. That was approved. And then there was discussions of raising it to 15,000 because these weren't technically commercial vehicles. So at the meeting, I pointed out this is a section that would need to be changed. Unfortunately, we changed it all by accident and didn't catch it, and so now we had to come back and clean it up.
Okay. Are there any questions from the governing body? Comments or questions? No? Is there anyone who would like to make public comment on this public hearing? Okay. I don't see anybody. In that case, do we have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. This will be voted on later this evening because we need to have the correction in place. Okay, moving on to 8A. 8A is Manassas Drive speeding analysis study and recommendations.
All right. Good evening. Before I turn it over to Calvin,
Yes.
just want to give a little bit of background to the residents of the governing body why we did this. When I was doing the town hall on the eastern side of the city to talk about the downtown, again, residents were asking me what we're going to do about Manassas Drive speeding. I went out with the police. We did see a lot of it in a certain stretch of road. So I asked Calvin and his team to do an actual study to evaluate the speeding and any potential solutions, and that's what you're going to hear tonight. There's just an information item right now, but if there's interest, we can put this in the CIP for consideration this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Or for FY25, my apologies.
Okay. Welcome, Calvin.
Good evening, Mayor Rischel, Vice Mayor Mensing, members of council, residents, staff, and guests. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. Here tonight to introduce Ryan Mattern, who will then present the study that Wallace Montgomery performed and their recommendations. I just wanted to cover a little bit of background. We have prior years prior to this, we've had numerous complaints about speeding along Manassas Drive, complaints about not just speeding, but people speeding in test-driven vehicles, things like that. There was a citywide study before we initiated the increased residential fine zones, the $200 increased fines for residential zones. There was a speeding study, but it was citywide. It didn't stay focused on just one area of Manassas Drive. This summer at a town hall, there were concerns about speeding along a particular portion of Manassas Drive between Carondelet and Blooms Park. So Laszlo went out there with the police and personally visited and observed what's going on out there, then directed staff to conduct a speed study to figure out what we could do to potentially calm some of the speeding through the area. We contacted Wallace Montgomery. They've done a little bit of work for the city in the past few years. You may remember they actually did our complete streets analysis and plan. But Wallace Montgomery came out, did their own speed analysis, placed speed detection out there in several areas, and their results were, a little bit different than what we had seen before with just a single speed detector in that area. So they did come back with some recommendations, and with that, I will turn it over to Ryan Mattern, a traffic engineer for Wallace Montgomery.
Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Let's go over the results of our study here. So I'm Ryan Mattern, traffic engineer with Wallace Montgomery. We were tasked with Calvin's team to do a speed study for Manassas Drive. We'll go over the data we found, some findings, recommendations, and potential next steps. So this just is an overview slide, visualizes the Manassas Drive section, Blooms Park to Carondelet. It's noted it's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. There's two different cross sections, which is important to note: 4-lane median separated cross section and a 2-lane undivided cross section closer to Blooms Park. It's a major collector with an ADT of approximately 13,000.
I just want to remind the governing body, we spoke about this in the past because this is the longest stretch of 4-lane road in our city without a stop sign or a traffic light. So we previously evaluated this as well, but this is a more thorough study.
Yep. So we went out in November to do a 2-day traffic study, 48-hour continuous count at 2 locations. One at the 4-lane cross section and another location at the 2-lane cross section. We collected data with automated tubes, and the results are here. We also reviewed crash data. There weren't any significant crashes. 2 were a result of excessive speeding, but we found no pattern of speed crashes in this area. So we'll go to the slides. So this is our speed data. We looked at location 1, which is the 4-lane cross section. This experienced a lot more speeding than location 2. You can see here the 85th percentile averages about 43 for both directions. That's a data point that we look at to set speed limits. So the 45th or 85th percentile for location 2 is approximately just over this speed limit of 35 miles an hour. We also looked at the percentage of vehicles over 35 mile an hour significantly at location 1, and then also the percent over 45, which is 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. So there's no direct guidelines or criteria that laid out for speed humps. So there are more guidelines and just criteria to review. So we looked at different industry standards, ITE. VDOT has a traffic calming guide for neighborhood streets, and FHA also has a traffic calming measure. So you can see here it's generally met. It is on a bus and emergency route, which is recommended, not to place one, as well as they're usually placed on 35 or 30 miles an hour or less. But you can see here our 85th percentile speed is under the recommended 45. So in our view, it's generally met to place speed humps. So sort of summarizes that, generally met. There's two different designs of speed humps we looked at, the traditional speed hump design as well as a speed cushion. What we're looking at here is a speed cushion. It's basically just separated the speed humps into three different segments. We also looked at potentially other traffic calming measures for around the same cost, such as the speed indicator signs, basically reading speeds and then displaying your speed as you drive by. So some strategies we thought of: location 1 would be a priority location. There's significant speeding going on there now. It's a 4-lane cross-section, and it generally meets the criteria. So location 1 would be a priority location. Location 2, it does not have as much speeding. However, we would want to monitor that as we put speed humps down. It is in the same corridor, and it's sort of at the limits of the speed zone. So in between these, we would probably also recommend speed indicator signs. And then to incorporate this, we just have a phased approach where you'd install one, monitor, and then reevaluate if a second location further down was needed. So here's a cross-section of the speed cushions. I think the fire department we researched has their own designs for speed humps. This has a similar cross-section for that design, but is in the 3 segments. So cost estimates for each traffic calming measure of the speed cushions. There's 3 locations, one for each of the 2-lane sections, the 2-lane section, and then the 4-lane median separated segment, and then the speed indicator signs, one for each direction along Manassas Drive. Oh. Yeah, and I guess that's pretty much it for
Okay,
us.
thank you.
Any questions?
That was very good. This is certainly needed. I have a quick question.
Okay.
Do we have any data on passenger vehicles that cross into the opposite lane in order to straddle the cushions? And I asked that because it was mentioned in the paperwork that accompanied the item.
Yeah, there's no, we don't have any specific data on that. That's just a note that sometimes that happens with the speed cushions compared to, obviously, you can't escape the speed humps.
You can't what? I'm sorry.
I mean, you can't maneuver around the speed humps when they're one continuous structure. I mean, I guess in the text, I think it mentions some of the benefits of why we would do cushions. Drainage is the main thing. You're not going to have ponding at the speed humps. When you go place them, we'd want to do a field visit to make sure you're not at any low points. And also, emergency vehicles and bicyclists, prefer the speed cushions.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions from the governing? Mike?
I have a question. I appreciate the presentation. Calvin, I have a question for you. That stretch of the road there past the stop sign, has there been consideration of downgrading it to a one-lane in each direction? Because I know people start to speed off and past the stop sign, making the 2 lanes of 1 lane into Conway a right turn only, and then going further into 1 lane.
There's been brief discussion numerous times because when you're looking for an affordable way to put in bike lanes and extend, I think at one point we were pursuing National Capital Trail expansion money, but that would require full bicycle lanes with barrier protection. We could probably do Sharrows or a single bike lane now, but in order to do something that would have met the conditions of that grant, we would almost have to lose a lane. I just don't know that. You saw the vehicle counts; they're pretty substantial, and I don't know that we've never gotten any farther than just saying we would have to do this to do some things affordably rather than just cut a new path somewhere else, we may have to consider,
Right.
you know, going down
I
to a
did
single lane.
notice after that stop sign, people seem to, because it's 2 lanes, and it does seem, even if you compress it a little bit, it would slow people down.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you should do both, but I
Yeah,
think
we've-
if it went down to 1 lane.
We've even talked about how just adding bicycle lanes
Right.
would create its
Or
own
restriping it.
traffic calming, because then you would narrow the lanes. People just feel, because it's wide lanes and it's a
Exactly.
wide road, that it should have a
Is it-
higher speed limit.
Is
So-
this something you would recommend down to moving it, restriping it to 1 lane in each direction from that stretch?
Yeah, I think we've been discussing traffic calming through that
Right.
section for quite some time,
Right.
you know, and usually we're hoping that it's some sort of bicycle lane addition
Right.
that spurs us to completely restructure, restripe that area and get some better traffic calming, squeeze the lanes down to a narrower profile so that people don't feel like they should be going 50 miles an hour.
And I'm saying removing just from 2 to 1 lane in each direction, and restriping and adding the other lane probably to a bicycle
Yeah,
lane.
we'd have to evaluate the pros and cons of doing that for that section. I want to look at school buses as well, and the experience of drivers related to school buses and those
That's all
lanes
it-
as well. So
Yeah,
we don't have an
absolutely.
answer for that tonight, but we can certainly evaluate your
If you
recommendation.
could, because I know about a block down, it does merge down to 1 lane.
Mhm.
And I think that stretch, for some reason, because of the openness, people do speed. Because I've walked sometimes along and you can just see the vehicle speeding. And I think it's because of an openness.
Yeah, there's just less subdivisions feeding in when it turns into one lane on each side. So that's why we want to evaluate, look at the whole thing.
And
Thank
I
you.
think Laszlo hit the nail on the head when he started talking about buses, because every conversation we've ever had when we start talking about reconfiguring Manassas Drive, it's the idea that, you know, the concept that the elementary school campus is down there to try to achieve all of that bus running around one way. You're gonna have a lot of frustrated residents trying to get around a bus train. And then what do as soon as they get around that bus train? They speed up and they take, so you're probably just moving your speeding problem from one place to another, but,
You're calming it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, yes.
I don't know if Laszlo or, it's been a long day, I forgot your name.
Calvin.
Calvin. That's sad, I forgot your name. Do we know do we know if there are students that actually cross over? Going heading to the school, they cross over from one side of the road to the other?
They don't.
They don't?
They don't. They don't.
So when they did have a walking policy for a very brief moment in
Very
time, you still weren't allowed to cross Manassas Drive. The
Okay.
students on the other side of Manassas Drive still had to be bused. So it is very difficult. You would have to have crossing guards to
Okay.
cross a 4-lane road. So.
Okay, I just want to know that. And what about the high school students? Because, over there's the small students, but high school students kind of do their own thing.
Yeah, and they cross at Bloom's Quarry Road, and we do have crossing guards that tend to that area, so.
Okay, so none of them are walking from down.
I'm not gonna say no, because I see them.
I know, that's what
But I don't think, I don't think the school promotes that. I think that's just some individuals, that's what their family situation promotes.
right.
They
but
have
it's
bus
not as-
service on each side.
But the number is not as great as in the old school days where the children would walk across. Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Okay, any other? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the presentation. I do agree that something needs to be done about the speeding. I just have a few questions. It says that they're not recommended for above 30-mile-per-hour zones.
Yeah.
Could you talk about like the fuel efficiency when you're slowing someone down to 15? Because I think it said that the speed hump should be taken at 15, so they're decreasing by 20 miles per hour.
Yeah, I think there's text, I'm not 100% familiar with it.
Can you
but-
speak directly
Oh,
into the?
yep, sorry. I think it cites that there's findings that it's an average of 8 miles an hour speed reduction. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the fuel efficiency either. Obviously, when you're braking, speeding up and braking and speeding up, I think the emphasis of 2 would sort of say that you can't speed up and there's another hump, so you're not, just over the hump and then you can speed. So that was the thought about looking at 2 different locations.
Okay, and you said they only slow down about 8 miles per hour on average?
That's off the
Okay.
top of my head. I'm pretty sure the ITE information we have said that. I'm not sure if it's in the text. I'll review that and I can get that.
Thanks. Also, it said they're not recommended on roads with our volume.
Yeah.
So are they just gonna wear sooner, or why is that?
Yeah, the maintenance is one concern. Obviously, the more vehicles that go over, the more maintenance they are. And I think they're not supposed to, they're trying to be away from arterial roads. So it's more of a traffic calming versus speed reductions on arterials, and so forth. So it's a neighborhood street, so that's why we said it's generally meets the criteria.
Okay. And then there was something about noise.
Yes.
So they're not recommended for residential because they create noise.
Yeah, I mean, driving over them with trucks or vehicles could increase the noise. I'm not sure how much, I'm not familiar if that's an actual problem or, have experience in that.
So I was, we did install a speed hump on Scott Drive.
Yeah.
Those are typically 25-foot front yard setbacks directly to the street. Here, you have the benefit of these are rear-facing properties. The rear faces Manassas Drive, and you not only have the rear yard 25-foot setback, but you also have the green space that belongs to the HOA. So I would say in most cases, the homes are probably closer to 60 to 80 feet away from Manassas Drive. So if it hasn't been a complaint yet on Scott, I don't know that it's going to become a noise complaint on Manassas Drive down through Blooms, but that's just applying one situation to the other. They may not be similar, so.
Okay. Have we thought about reducing the speed limit to 30 and what that would do to the speeding problem? I don't know if that would help or
I think it
not.
would increase, or it may reduce, I think because of the 4 lanes, people like to go faster there. I think you're gonna have more speeding violations, maybe not necessarily more speeding, but more speeding violations occurring.
And-
When we first moved to Manassas Park, the speed limit on that part of Manassas Drive was 25 miles an hour. People were furious.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, that seems.
They were very upset. Tickets right and left,
Yeah, it's a 4-lane road, and
So I know Mr. Carrera was talking about eliminating a lane for bicycles, but then there's the other option of reducing the lanes and keeping them. Would that be a problem for the buses?
again, we'd have to evaluate that, so please send us any things you'd further like us to evaluate, and we would do that, but I'm not gonna answer that now without coordinating with bus drivers. They're gonna know best kind of what the impacts are, and also residents dealing with the buses in the mornings and the afternoon, kind of what their experience is as well. But certainly narrowing lanes is a traffic calming recommendation. Yeah.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Comments or questions? Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it, Calvin, for the presentation. I just want to say in the onset, I'm definitely for the traffic calming in Blooms at the 2 locations that have been identified. And you do, I mean, the data shows that people are definitely speeding in that small area, stretch of area. But as I understand this study, it's encompassing all of Manassas Drive. Is that not correct?
No, we
No.
just looked at that specific section.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's then my question. Why just that specific question?
Because that's where the residents asked, and I promised them because they were.
Because we've
Yeah.
I've heard from this microphone that people are speeding in the downtown, right near Park 170.
Mhm.
I mean, Doyle used to talk about it all the time. Just the speeding that goes on right here, and people trying to get over to our festivals and things of that nature, from the train track all the way to Euclid.
We already
becomes a
evaluated that.
racetrack.
We already evaluated that. That was part of
And so
the,
are we gonna put traffic calming cushions?
well,
there?
we already have some cushions, but it's part of the Complete Streets project. So we're actually putting in a grant right now for traffic enhancements along Manassas Drive per the Complete Streets. So we already evaluated the downtown area for Manassas Drive and what measures can be taken.
And so in our historic side, well, I'm glad we're doing that, and hopefully we'll do something about it, because I get calls from people from Park 170 saying they can't get across to our events because the cars are speeding along the way. But also, I would ask, there's the historic side of the city. I also get emails about traffic being very fast there. So are we addressing that as well with this study, or is there going to be another study?
It wasn't
in the
addressed with this
future?
study, no. This study was specifically narrowly focused per the request of the town hall that I attended where the
Okay.
residents wanted us to look at this specific issue. And it's been brought up, this one has been brought up more than any other since
Sure.
my time here. And it's also, again, the longest stretch of four-lane road in our city. So it makes sense to me why people are complaining about that section. But I'm not opposed if you guys want me to study, or we're supposed to be doing a comprehensive Manassas Drive study. We've been doing it piecemeal because we've been getting grant funds for different things.
Yeah.
We have the HSIP project, over $1 million we're gonna do to improve safety measures all along Manassas Drive, but mainly, again, on the western side. It ends in Carondelet, I believe, for HSIP. So we're already investing a lot in our road on Manassas Drive for safety improvements, but we're not done. We're gonna keep looking at Manassas Drive as well. We're looking at lighting right now as well, and so we're doing other things along Manassas Drive, all along the stretch of Manassas Drive.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I just hope that we do look at the entire Manassas Drive, and that's good to hear that we're going to do studies in the historic part of our town, because I have heard that there have a lot of speeding, and I've had people stand before this microphone and talk about the speeding that takes place in the historic side. I don't want the perception to be that it's happening in Blooms yet again. I live there. I want it to happen.
Yeah.
I put it out there, but I don't want that perception that that's where all the work is always going in Blooms.
It's not accurate. We're spending over $1 million.
I'm just saying it's a
on-
perception.
I know, but I would correct that perception, let
Okay,
them know we're spending
okay.
$1 million on Manassas Drive, mainly on the west side. So we're doing a lot more investments on the west when it comes to Manassas Drive, the street lighting, all that stuff. Thanks to Councilmember Amaya, we've been heavily focused on the western half. It's just,
I was going to say, Councilmember Ryan did a great job with that light survey she did, and so we were able to proceed with that. Thank you very much.
so far, we really haven't spent a penny yet on this section of Manassas Drive that's been raised here. But again, this is where you can speed the most out of any part of Manassas Drive, is this area here. And when I went out with police, this is where I also saw, no doubt, there was a lot of speeding occurring in this area as well.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, because we talked about a few things here today. We talked about narrowing lanes. You already have narrower lanes on the west side of the city. We talked about the fact that this is the longest stretch of four-lane road with no stop signs or traffic signals. You have stop signs along Manassas Drive on the west side of town. There's plenty of reasons for people to stop. There's also more entrances, side streets entering in, so there's more opportunity for cars to come in and slow the traffic down. But with the HSIP work and with the Polk Drive intersection that we're currently working on, we're putting in a lot of bulb outs and things like that to further constrain the roadway. We're not looking at speed humps or speed bumps, because there's already stop signs and things to sort of slow the flow of traffic down, and you already have the lower speed limit. But we are looking at all sorts of other traffic measures that will be implemented.
Yeah.
So traffic calming is not being ignored on that side, just a different approach.
And we did add the speed humps on Scott, which is on the west. I'm glad you brought up the Polk intersection.
I think that's part of the
5 times
issue.
worth the cost of this project here. It's
Okay.
much more expensive than this.
Yeah, they're very expensive to
Yeah.
do that on traffic light. A comprehensive plan on Manassas Park. Right now, we're getting in drabs and dribbles here on this dais. It'd be nice to have a comprehensive report from city line to city line on Manassas Drive on what we're planning on doing.
Yeah, it's in the CIP and it's in the works. The issue is that we have gotten grant money through various channels. We've gotten grant money, and they've tackled bits and pieces of what would be in a comprehensive traffic study. So rather than just go ahead and spend money to have repeat data and repeat opinions coming in at one time, the concept we're working with here is when these studies are completed, then we'll look at everything that we did not look at, the entire corridor and any missing data, put all of that together into a comprehensive Manassas Drive traffic study. But right now, there's so much data coming in and other reports, other studies, that we would just be, I don't want to say wasting money. Do I think you're ever wasting money to get a second opinion? No, but we would be duplicating data collection, we'd be duplicating design ideas, things like that.
Yeah, I guess I'm not talking about duplication. I'm talking about a report that the citizens can go to our webpage and say, this is the plan for Manassas Drive from city line to city line.
You mean a compilation of everything?
Yes,
that's
of
been done
everything
so
in
far?
our webpage, in our website, where they can go and read and understand what we're doing in Blooms and what we're doing on the west side and what we're doing in the center of the city.
Don't
You're
you
saying
have
the
a comp-
currently approved programs, just kind of an
It could be
information
a
item.
future plan. We could say, when funding comes in, we'll be able to do some of these things. but a comprehensive plan that people can read about, understand.
Yeah, and that's what Calvin's saying, that's what we're working towards, but if you want to do that now, we'll do that now. We were trying to save taxpayer money because we were getting grants for pieces, and then we were gonna consolidate everything and do one comprehensive plan at that time, but we can just go ahead and do it
Hold on.
now
I think-
and knock it all out.
I think I understand your line.
Please.
It could be something as simple as a checklist or a table that says, you know, we've done these roads in these fiscal years, these are the remaining, and like you said, these could be future date. I think
Yeah,
my
please.
interpretation, and based on, and also living on the west side,
So not a study.
no, we're talking about for lack of a better word, metrics.
Okay. We can do certainly the things in the past and things that are approved. What I can't do is things that will, that we don't know about that haven't been approved yet, because we don't know what that is until the study's done. But that's what I was talking about, is I can put everything that's been approved so far. We can lay that out and say, here's what we're working on in terms of Manassas Drive.
So we
I'm not
can't-
gonna be able to predict resurfacing and other stuff, because we look at that annually based off the budget we have and.
But we
the-
could also put a list of streets that are remaining. You don't have to give a date. We know that at some point in the future, and that future might be 6 months, it might be 6 years, it might be.
You're talking about for resurfacing.
Is that,
I think what you're looking.
So we're talking about
Mine was
different
more
things here,
traffic
so that's
calming.
why.
Mine was just traffic.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, so
Traffic
we're
that
talking
could be
about
the
different
same,
things here.
and I think that's what Councilmember Moore is and that's kind of what I'm envisioning. It's just a table, so folks can know.
But you said something different, you're talking about resurfacing.
If I did, I
That's what you
misspoke.
mentioned as an example, so she's.
Right.
giving
Okay,
you
but
example.
what specifically are you looking for then? Because I'm still not clear exactly what you're looking for.
Here, how about
think
I draw it for you? Because I'm better
No,
at
but what's in the
visual.
table? Because what you described in the table is exactly what I said, which was the resurfacing work.
What I think I would like to see
Hold
is
on.
what,
Can I finish, please? Okay, so we have a table, just on a webpage, that says, these are
I'm familiar with
traffic.
what a table looks like.
Pardon?
I'm familiar with what a table looks like. I'm
I
asking
know.
for what the content in the table is.
Give me a second.
Okay,
I'm working through it, okay?
okay,
So please, just bear with me.
sure.
Traffic calming that's been done, and you can list things here. Traffic calming that's in the works, listed here, and a to be determined,
How do we know what's to be determined?
whatever's remaining.
What does that mean exactly? Define that.
Would that be parts of Manassas Drive on the west side that haven't
For
been touched?
projects that are approved?
Or they're approved, then we could put that in there, then maybe that's in the, or maybe instead of to be determined, it's pending approval. I'm just
But we don't
giving
even
some
have the
sort of
recommendations
recommendation,
yet.
and I'm leaving it to you to take
Yeah,
the
we don't have the
recommendation.
recommendations yet.
I think the first two columns is.
may I say something?
Hold on, let me finish, please. A recommendation of how the data or the information could be shared. That's that's where I'm getting at. I'm not saying I'm not telling you what streets can be in there, but I think what we're getting at is residents are coming to us. We don't always have the full picture. This could be a win-win, not only to tell the residents, but also they can have it at their fingertips, and also for us to look at as well. Remember, we don't live and breathe this like you guys do. We've got,
I'm still- yeah.
anything to help educate or inform the public would be beneficial.
Correct, so it'd be, again, everything that we've done and everything that's approved that we're going to do, because I can't predict what we haven't even
Well,
evaluated
we
or
get that.
recommended yet.
We get it. We get that no one has a crystal ball. And I think, Yessie, I think you just said that's a good place to start.
What I would mimic is what the other jurisdictions do. They have a comp plan. Prince William County has one, and just model that. And
A comprehensive plan?
Yeah, a comprehensive plan with land use, everything. I think that's a component of it. That's what I would like to see. But you know what I'm talking about. I think
You're talking about, like, we have a comp plan.
I know
We
the
need to
comp plan,
update
just
the-
update that comp plan. I
Oh,
know-
yeah, we're actually looking
I
to
know
do
you're
that.
in
That's
the
gonna be the
process,
CIP
probably
this year.
part of that. I think that's where the
Okay.
confusion is. That's what I would like to see, because every jurisdiction has a comp plan. I don't know, there's no state law that requires a certain timeframe. Some do 10, 20
Yeah,
years.
every
some
5
do-
years, you're supposed to review the comprehensive
supposed
plan.
to
It doesn't mean
review
you
it,
have to
but you-
rewrite it every 5 years, but you're supposed to look at it.
Yes,
We've
yes.
done modifications.
That's what I think.
A
That's what I
little
think.
bit in pieces every year, but in the CIP this year, we're gonna be putting in and do a full rewrite of the comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
So is there a way to post something more summary, like on the website, versus the whole plan? I think that's what we're asking.
A summary of the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, something more like a short.
Something that's user-friendly.
Okay, you recognize the comprehensive plan just isn't transportation. There's a lot of chapters to it, but you guys want a summary of the comprehensive plan. Is that what I'm hearing?
Something simpler to post
No.
on the website if you can.
Of the transportation part of it?
Just a link
Is that what you're
for
talking about?
downloaded.
Or the infrastructure one, the one that's gonna cover Manassas Drive, like whatever we have.
You want the transportation chapter of the comprehensive plan to be summarized?
if you can.
Okay, I'll look at the chapter and I'll see how
I always
but not the
found
entire
that
comprehensive.
I always found that the comp plan at the indexing is summarized, so I always found that when I read them from other jurisdictions. So I don't know if you have to go.
Yeah, we have summarized action plans in our comp
Yeah.
plans. I would say we've looked at more recently for updating. The background information is very outdated in the comprehensive plan, but we're gonna do a full rewrite. What I'd recommend then maybe, we can do a quick summary, I can read it and I can best summarize each chapter and put it on the website if you want a summary of what's in it. But then it's something we can ask for the consultant who will do the rewrite for us to have essentially an executive summary of the
Yes.
comprehensive plan, if that works.
Yes. that
We don't
would
have
be-
that right now, but it's something we can work on.
Yes.
But again, that's more comprehensive. That's land use, that's environment, that's housing.
That's fine.
That's there's a lot of components to the comprehensive plan. But I want to bring it back to transportation because that's where we
Right,
were
right.
focused on.
Like-
What I can do is
Laszlo, could
yes.
you do a sample table and send it to us, and then let us comment on what you've done?
Okay, but for that sample table, you want me to put everything that we've done for transportation
Everything
purposes
done,
and everything that's
everything
approved to do?
approved, and everything, perhaps everything we would like to do. Future
Like to do
planning
is
goals.
just, that's the CIP, I guess. I can list projects in the CIP,
Yeah.
if that's what you'd like.
I think it would be helpful so the residents can understand.
Sure.
But if you also could put the fiscal years on the ones that have been
Yeah,
done, so
I mean,
folks
we have that in
can-
the CIP, but we'll summarize it.
Yeah, but keep in mind, folks don't always have the time to download. But if you give the fiscal years, then folks can understand why their street is not being tackled, right?
But
'Cause it was
tackle how? You're talking about now you're going back to
Well,
resurfacing or?
Just whenever the traffic calming part of it was done. Because, maybe someone that lives in another part of Manassas Drive believes that their part needs to be focused on. Maybe it had been. Maybe we put a four-way stop sign in there 2 years ago. Just something so people can understand the.
Historically, I get, that
Yeah.
I completely understand. I'm
Yeah.
just not tracking the crystal ball
No.
component of it. You want everything, I understand historical, what we've done so far, and what we're planning on doing, right? So far.
Yes.
That's perfect, I can do that. I can't,
Yes.
but I can't put in predicting what I'm gonna plan
No.
or what we're gonna bring back.
No.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay.
No more questions.
Do you have a follow-up, Councilmember Moore? Councilmember Moore, do you have a follow-up?
I think everybody followed that for
Do you have a question?
Yes, done. Good.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is for the location one speed cushion. What's the length difference between that cushion and intersection?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly, I think we might have, we don't have it detailed on here. I think,
Okay.
It was in here, I think it's 600 feet.
yeah, I was gonna say 600, 800 feet.
It was 600 written here somewhere.
Yeah.
So 600 to 800 feet, I guess both ways before that intersection arrives, I guess.
Correct, yeah.
And then, I guess after the 600 feet, would there be another cushion on location 2? Right?
But I think you're saying 600 to 800 feet to the intersection at Carondelet, right?
Separated from the intersection.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So then now from cushion 1 to cushion 2, where's location 2 located?
Location 2 is farther, I guess, to the east or north,
Closer to Bloom.
closer to Blooms,
Okay.
as the
Well, what I'm trying to
northbound
get
lane.
at is the far part cushion's gonna calm the traffic, be effective?
But if you look at the speed table, so
Yeah.
when they're closest to Blooms Park, they
Yeah.
haven't developed speed yet.
Right.
This location is farther away from the park where the speed has picked up. It will slow them down, and then 600 to 800 feet from that, they have a four-way stop, so they have to stop.
Well, right, because out of, thank you, 700 feet. Because, we're all drivers here, and, we're all gonna slow down approaching a stop sign. And I'm trying to see the effectiveness of it being so close to an intersection, that speed cushion. If it's already gonna do the job, why not push it maybe a little more farther away? Slow
Yes.
it down, and then actually have the second slow down towards the intersection. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so
Okay.
this is sort of based off of our initial counts, and we tried to get a pretty accurate location for speed counts, because you don't want them as someone's speeding up from a stop sign or slowing down. So we separated it from that, and then looked at you know, how would we best put two if we were putting two locations? So there's guidance for the distance between the two and from stop signs. So that's sort of where we located them.
You got someone's chats popping up.
Okay, and then, my other question is, I know I brought this up in the past before, there's, those ripples on the roads, I don't know what they're called.
Like rumble strips?
Yeah, right, do they, like, you know, before the intersection, I think I've seen some communities have them, and 2-3 strips before the intersection. Do they have the same effect as slowing down cars, you think?
So I'll go ahead and say if the concern was noise, the rumble strips are going to get you instant complaints. And
Yeah,
especially
that's
if we're also considering putting in a speed hump with divider, you know, that people can drive around, and you
Right.
put rumble strips in the center line, yeah, people are gonna want it all taken out because it's gonna be loud. You're gonna hear it all night long, so.
Okay. That's all the questions I have at this time.
I have a, Madam
Yes,
I have a
ma'am.
go-back question. Do we know of all the people that, that got the tickets the day you were out with them? How many were Manassas Park residents? Like a rough, was it 50%, 75%?
They were all Manassas Drive residents from the ones that that's pretty far out there. There's not a lot of reasons for non-residents except that they're coming out for Blooms Park.
Right,
Yeah.
that was kind of my guess.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I have one last question. Is it possible that if number 1 is installed, that it could be so effective that number 2 would not be needed?
Yeah.
That's possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, like the phase strategy, I think you would,
I'm sorry?
the phase strategy of having 2 locations, you know, doing one first.
Okay.
The concern is that speeding might shift, but
Okay.
it could remain the same.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, we're recommending we just do the one and then come back afterwards and evaluate the numbers on the other.
Right, I
before
saw
visiting.
that, yeah, I saw that. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
I have one more question.
Oh, you have,
This is
yes,
for
go
our city
ahead,
manager.
go ahead.
So you're saying that if we want to go forward with the one, we should suggest to you that this be added to our CIP or to the budget, or how do we
Yeah.
transfer that? Do you need a consensus from us tonight?
Sure,
or-
I was gonna put it in the draft CIP, and then, you know, we're just gonna wait for any additional guidance and thought, give you guys time to digest. And if you don't wanna do this, then just tell me, we'll pull it out of the CIP. If you'd wanna evaluate this and, you know, discuss it during the budget time, we can keep it in this draft CIP until you guys are ready to approve.
So this will come back to us?
Yeah, it's gonna be part of the CIP with a list of all the
Okay.
projects.
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Any other
Just to,
Councilmember Javed, go ahead.
City Manager, since, you know, this will be affecting the school buses, maybe no feedback from this transportation from their side?
Yeah, I wanna say, didn't we coordinate, Calvin, with the schools, with these speed humps?
Yeah, I think, because we regularly coordinate with the transportation folks at the schools. And I think Steve did have this conversation with them. I think from the school bus standpoint, just speed humps, I think they would almost rather just have people slow down than worry about what it's gonna mean to cross the speed hump. Because if I was driving a school bus, that would be my concern, is that I'm gonna stop somewhere, let some kids out, and some speeder is gonna do something terrible. So, and I'm sure that speeders don't make their job easier, because we like to all fly around the bus train and get ahead of it as quickly as possible.
And you've received input from our first responders, is that correct?
Yeah, so we're using the actual model
Okay.
that we use on Scott, because that was directly provided by the fire marshal to us about the types of speed cushions that wouldn't negatively impact their vehicles.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, or, yes, ma'am?
Do you have any idea when we're gonna get the study for the west side regarding the speed and the accidents on Manassas Drive, right after Denver Drive?
The speed and the accidents.
So I've been asking about a study regarding how many accidents have, because my street, right in front of my street, there's at least 10 accidents every 2 or 3 months. So when I've been asking for a study regarding how many accidents we get, how many speeding tickets we get. Do we have any idea when we're getting that?
So that accident data was part of the HSIP study.
So it's already been published.
Yeah, all of that accident data was ingested for the HSIP study and analysis, and now
Okay.
we're in the process of actually designing and implementing the recommendations from the HSIP study. But that HSIP study, if you look at it in detail, shows all of the accident data along that corridor.
Okay,
Do you guys want a refresh briefing on HSIP? It's the $1 million project on
That would be helpful.
Manassas Drive.
That
Okay.
would be very helpful.
thank you.
the. Okay. Mhm.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay, moving on to 8B, smart water meter implementation update.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Member, Mayor, members of the governing body. Wanted to give you guys an update on the water meter replacement.
Is your microphone turned on?
It was off.
Okay,
It's on now. I'll start again.
thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the governing body. Wanted to give you guys an update on the water meter project that the city approved on July 19th, 2022. Our current system is set up as an automated meter reading, or SMR system, meaning we still have to have somebody drive the route. And the route, while they're driving the route, most of our meters, the data is transferred onto their computer in their vehicle. What we're hoping to, or what we're in the process of upgrading to, is an automated meter infrastructure. This means that the readings will automatically come into a system, so we don't have to drive the route anymore. It will also, in the future, have a portal that our residents are able to log into at any given point and kind of see what their daily, or at least weekly, meter readings are. That will be coming closer to the summer, but we are gotten to the point where we are going to be replacing the water meters. So some benefits to this project: we no longer need someone to drive the route in order to collect meter readings. This frees up an employee and reduces the city's carbon footprint by taking vehicles off the road. We will have crews starting on March 4th. Actually, they start on February 20th. Select reader, this went ahead. I'm like, where am I at? All right. This will have increased frequency of the readings, will allow the city to identify leaks or spikes in service much quicker, saving the city and its residents money by addressing the issues quicker. So, it'll be set up with a threshold. When they start to notice water, going out at a pretty consistent rate somewhere, we're going to send someone to investigate, or even when we have the portal in place, it will notify the homeowner that, potentially that something's going on, water's leaking out of their system pretty quickly. It might just be that they're filling their swimming pool and they know that and they're ready for it, but for the most part, it'll give them that warning, so to help save them money. Residents will be able to monitor their water consumption in real time and adjust their usage as they see fit once the portal is live, which again should be around late summer 2024. And it will provide closer meter reading dates and billing dates. Currently, they meet the readers around the 15th of the month, and it's not until the following month that they really even get their bill and can see the data of how much water they're using and then are able to pay. All right, now on to this. February 20th is when we will start changing out select meters in the city. Those select meters are meters that aren't communicating as well with the route driving system, so we're usually having to do manual reads. That will just be a one crew starting that, and then on March 4th, we have additional crews that will be starting on a specific route, which we're calling Route 11. That's based on the meter reader who was driving the route before, and be changing out those meters starting, like I said, on March 4th. Route 11 is predominantly in the Blooms neighborhood. That's just because that is the largest route, but that's also the route that has the most amount of meters with some communication issues, so they're already going to be over there. The pace of the crews will vary depending on weather and the condition of the meters. In most cases, should take about 30 minutes to change out a meter, but you never know, they could run into issues while they're changing someone's meter, and it might take them a little bit longer. We will be heavily communicating which streets are scheduled for installation each week. The next slide will go over the communication plan. Crews will knock on the resident's door. If someone is home, they will see if it's a good time to turn off the water. If they're in the middle of running the laundry or a load of dishes or, taking a shower, then they are not going to, they'll wait and come back and do it, later in the day or later another time. If no one answers, they will check the meter to make sure it's not currently running. Again, somebody could be taking a shower or running a load of laundry. And they will wait and recheck and try and get to it, as soon as possible. Hopefully, none of that's the case. People are at work or they're home and they say, yeah, sure, go ahead. And they will just change the water meter out. Again, it'll take about 30 minutes. There will be a brief period of time where water does have to be shut off to the residents. Really should only be a few minutes, but again, they could run into issues in the water meter change out that, it could be closer to 30 minutes without water. The door hanger will be left after they've replaced the meter in the event that, whether they're there or not, but if a resident is at work and they come home, there will be a door hanger left on their residence, letting them know what next steps they need to take. Because whenever you turn off water to something, you need to start bleeding the air out after the water is restored. We will also have our information on there, and a QR code that will direct them back to the city's website that we're creating, or webpage that we're creating, that will have specific information about the project. So our communications plan, we'll have a city webpage. We've already started creating it. It's just in draft form right now. We wanted you guys to get this information first. We'll have the webpage created with it'll be a one-stop location for all the information for the project. We'll regularly put out what routes they're going to be on next with a map showing them, which houses are in that map. Now, we're going to shy away from giving ETAs on particular days. We'll give a broad, this route is up, because we don't want someone to change their plans and then, we're running behind or we're running ahead, and it kind of, keeps us from continuing on. We will have a list of streets that are up next for installation, and then we'll have a list of frequently asked questions and the benefits to the system and what they can expect from it. We'll have regular posts on social media to begin probably tomorrow about the upcoming project and what to expect. And again, as we get closer to the 20th and to the 4th of March, lists of the streets that are up next for installation. We will be using Everbridge, which is one of our emergency communication systems. We're able to geofence particular areas, even go down to a specific address that's linked to a certain household and send out a text message or an email or even a phone call to them, so long as they've registered. So that's something we'll be pushing out on our social media, is information on reminding them on how to register for Everbridge so that they're on that emergency communication system. Because outside of this, project, it would be beneficial in the future for all of, any emergency or issue we have in the city, being able to communicate with them. So we'll give them instructions again on how to sign up for that. We'll be using the variable message boards to just, that has to be brief. There is a character limit on those, so it'll be a brief notification about the project, when it'll be starting, and directing them back to the city's webpage. There will be a note going out on the next water bills, just, again, very brief. There is a character limit on that as well, but directing them to the city's webpage. And then we do plan to send out flyers via the schools in English and in Spanish, and most of these things will be in English and in Spanish as well. The variable message boards will not, but and the water bills will not, but as many things as we can do in both, we will. And get those distributed to the schools as just an extra way to hopefully get people aware of what's going on. When it comes to customer service for this project, we're asking any residents to either email this email address up here, watermeterproject@manassasparkva.gov, or call our customer service line. This phone number right here comes to City Hall, and it goes directly to our customer service team. It's a little, kind of an added benefit to not having to call the main City Hall line, where then you go through a directory and you can get kind of confused as to who do I need to contact about this. This will go directly to a person, not a, unless we're not here. But for the most part, we'll go directly to a person, and they'll be able to take down their information and then coordinate with someone to get back to them. Customer service may not know all the answers to their questions, but we'll be able to help get it taken care of. Again, the customer portal will be available to residents later this summer. They need to make sure that a good majority of the meters are in place before they set up the portal and start collecting the data and making sure that the data works. Once we get to that phase in the project, again, we will be massively communicating that to the public on how, with videos on how to access the portal, how to, see what, so they understand what they can see on the portal. Might kind of be intimidating to some people who aren't as tech savvy, but it could be really beneficial to those that are and that are comfortable and can look at the data and figure out, when they're using too much water and setting up the alerts that they might set up themselves for when too much water is going out, so that they can identify when there might be a leak. And again, we'll be sending out that information once we've gotten to that point which should be midsummer, we're hoping. All of this, we're hoping to get done. All the meter installations should be hopefully be done by the end of June. But again, it really depends on the condition of the meters that they're replacing and the weather. There's only so much they can do in certain weather, but that is, that's the plan.
Oh.
And that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you very much. Quick question, when the folks come and knock on the door to see if the folks are home and they want to switch out the meter, will they have Manassas Park identifiable clothing on?
So we will, some of our frequently asked questions and in a lot of the material that we're going to be putting out, we will have the logo of the contractor that is going to be doing most of the installation.
Okay.
But at first, when we have the first crews going out, we will have at least one City of Manassas Park employee with them.
Okay.
The challenge is going to be once March 4th comes around, they're going to have several teams tackling the project at one time, and we might not have a Manassas Park employee with every crew.
Okay.
But we are going to put out pictures of what the logo looks like, what the trucks will look like, the logo on the trucks, so that they, can rest assured that the person that's coming there saying we're going to change out your meter is supposed to be there. It's my understanding that with most of the homes or all of the homes, they won't have to access the inside of the home. So that'll probably be something we should probably push out too, just for their own safety, that they shouldn't be asking to come into your home.
Okay.
It should be able to be done outside and
Right.
in the easement.
Well, I asked because many people do not answer their door unless they know exactly who's at their door.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we will have pictures of it's Second Sight is the name of the subcontractor, and I just got their logo today, so I'll be putting that on some of the marketing material that we're going to be sending out, and I even have some images of what, potentially their crew and their trucks will look like. Now, it's not, definitive pictures of each individual on the crew, but kind of an idea of what these people should be driving around and what they will be carrying with them and those things.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
If you want, we are more than happy to have a sign, if you provide us with one, and we'll have it displayed at our upcoming events with Keep the Park Beautiful and the Community Maintenance Working Group.
Okay. I can see what I can get together so that
Okay.
you can put out some information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Questions?
Thank you for the presentation.
Questions?
Just-
Yes, sir.
Sir, excellent presentation. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for the comprehensive nature. Will this be commercial meters as well as residential?
Yes.
Commercial.
But a lot of those will probably be handled, not privately, but they will work one-on-one with those customers to change out any of those meters, just because of the impact it may have, especially like the schools. Those meters need to get replaced, but we're not just going to cut off the water for 30 minutes to the school in the middle of the school day. But the bulk of our water meters are going to be residential, and so a lot of those we can do, during the weekday.
Thank you.
Okay. Question? Okay.
Great.
Any last minute questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was very informative. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes of January 16th, 2024, recommendation to the Prince William Circuit Court for the appointment of Rachel Kirkland to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a term ending March 31st, 2026, and that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to negotiate and sign an agreement with A&M Financial LLC for Human Resources Department Treasurer's Office and Commissioner of the Revenue Accounting Support Services at an annual cost not to exceed $59,000 as presented and subject to final city attorney review. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. 10A is a discussion of backyard parking. The governing body has had ongoing discussions of backyard parking, and our most recent discussion was the last meeting in January. I requested that we continue our discussion this evening so as not to let this issue be forgotten or have it fall off of our radar. I think it's important. If we're really serious about community maintenance in the city, and I believe that we all are, this is a part of that. So I hope everyone had a chance to read the summary of what's already in Chapter 31 of City Code related to this issue, and it would be helpful if Dean would give a summary of this for the benefit of the viewing public.
Yeah, at the last meeting, we talked about some of the regulations that are in the code right now, and we mentioned that in the R1 and R2 districts, which are primary residential districts on the west side of the city, there is no restriction on the percentage of impervious area that you can have on an individual lot, and there's also no restriction on how much of your rear yard can be used for parking vehicles. I mentioned at the time that in the PUD, which is the Plan Unit Development District, there is a 70% maximum impervious area, but what I didn't mention at the time is that is for the entire development. Okay, so when these developments come in, they have to have a minimum area before they can develop into a PUD development. And that whole development has to have no more than 70% impervious area, and that includes roads and everything else. So it'd be very hard to come up with a number for an individual lot within a PUD district. And the same is true for the downtown mixed-use district. There's a 75% cap on impervious area there, but like the PUD district, it's for the entirety of the development. So it would be difficult to put a percentage cap on the impervious area on individual lots in those districts. And so for that reason, I'm going to recommend that we don't go down that road unless you want to do a survey to find out what percentage is average, or what is the normal percentage for those residential lots within those districts. Now, one other thing is on the backyards. There's also no restriction on the percentage of the rear yard that can be used for parking in any of the districts. There is a restriction on how much of the rear yard can be used for an accessory building. That's something such as a shed or a standalone garage or something of that nature, and that's 30%. So as you go through this discussion, keep in mind that whatever percentage you decide to come up with for the maximum for the devoted to parking in the rear yards, you also have to take into consideration that 30% of the rear yard that can be used for that. So if there were some people talking last time about maybe 50% of the rear yard could be used for parking. Well, if you add that to the 30% that can be used as an accessory building, now you're up to 80% of the rear yard that's impervious area, and that might have some serious impacts on the runoff into neighboring property. So just some thoughts, some ideas I just wanted to throw out there. But that's a quick summary of our code, and the zoning ordinance doesn't really provide a whole lot of regulation on what can be done with parking in the rear yards.
Dean, so the accessory building that you mentioned at 30%, that is also impervious, right?
Right, yeah. And impervious, for those who aren't familiar with it, just means that it blocks the water from seeping into the ground. So impervious is like a driveway, the house itself, a patio, another building, anything like that that would block the water from its natural drainage.
So the percentage that we choose, it might be advisable to choose a number that we think is fair, that would accommodate both parking and an accessory building.
Right. So if you were going to say, say 50% of the rear yard would be for impervious use, that would be total. So that means if they maximize the area of an accessory building at 30%, then only 20% could then be used for other uses, such as off-street parking, or a patio. So you gotta limit it somehow. So
Right.
keep that in mind when you come up with a number.
Right, okay, thank you. Who would like to start out with comments? Yes, ma'am.
I'll just talk, well, last time when we spoke, we all agreed that we would not go by the way of Winchester,
Right.
which is no
Yeah.
backyard parking
Which is
tolerated.
draconian.
Right. Whatever we come up with, I think there was a suggestion tonight made from one of the residents that it just be something very simple,
Right,
a
right.
percentage.
Yeah,
With that, I'm going to be quiet. I'm rather let others speak.
yeah. I think we had tossed around at a previous meeting, can't remember which one, we had tossed around 50%. Yeah,
remember
and that
hearing
would
that.
still leave 50% pervious and 50% impervious. So, yeah. Comments?
Yeah, definitely 100% can't happen. I don't think I was here last meeting. Is that
Yeah.
when we discussed?
No, that's ridiculous, 100%.
Yeah, so certain percentage needs to be discussed, and I think, the public comment where he suggested was, a simple solution for the whole lot instead of measuring each different house.
Yeah, it's easy to calculate.
Right,
Yeah,
so-
yeah,
I think that approach, whatever
Yeah.
number that comes out to be, would be
Yeah.
the easiest route.
yeah.
And at the same time, I mean, we don't want to,
Yeah.
parking back at the end of the city is tough, so,
Yeah. How do you feel about 50%?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
50%, I
okay,
think
yeah.
seems fair.
Yeah.
I mean, is that for,
Mayor, could I chime in?
Yes, please.
So when you say 50%, Mr. Smith was talking about the entirety of the lot.
right.
Bear in mind, the house already takes up a significant portion of that. So are we talking about 50% of the yard area that exclusive of the house? Are we talking about 50% of the entirety of the yard? If you're limited to the rear yard and a percentage of the rear yard, we can calculate that. If you want to allow it in the front yard as well and take it for the entirety of the whole lot, it's going to be a little more difficult only because we're going to have to individually figure out what each lot's house, the percentage of the impervious area that's already there. So it's a little more difficult, whereas the definition of a rear yard is such that it's the back side of the house to the back of the lot for the entire width. So it's kind of easier to measure that than it would be for
And
the
just-
entirety of the lot.
Yeah.
And just to add
And
to,
I think that when we've been discussing it, I think we were assuming it would be just the backyard.
and that would be my recommendation, because if you say 50% of the total, you can just turn your front yard into a parking lot, right? You put all the 50% in your front yard, right? So I agree with the city attorney that it should be
Yeah.
restricted to the rear yard.
Yeah, and I think that that's what we had been discussing.
Yes, that's right.
Backyard, yeah. Okay. Comments?
I'm going to be very clear with what I say. I agree with the 50% if we do the backyard, but I am also basically in favor of capping the number of vehicles in the backyard.
Of what? Can you say that again, please?
I would support, if that's the consensus, to do the 50%, so 25 in the backyard, so the 30 plus the 20, so 50%. But I am more in favor of capping the total number of vehicles in the backyard. I think the issue is, even if you do 50%, the concern of the residents is, even with 50% in the backyard, you could probably put 10 vehicles back there. That is the major concern of people storing a series number of vehicles in their backyard, and that is the diminution of quality of life.
And I totally understand that. I appreciate that. I'm thinking that that's going to complicate things incredibly by counting the cars, and how are we going to view the backyard? I mean, it's,
I'm open
Yeah,
to starting off at the
it's-
50% if that's on the backyard, and see how
Yeah.
that.
yeah. Yeah. Comments?
I'm good with 50%. I'm good with 50% of the backyard.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
we've seen, there's been a couple examples that we've seen in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you had slides for us.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Plus some residents
Councilmember
reaching
Amayo,
out.
How do you feel about 50%?
I'm gonna abstain from the comment because I think we still need more information. I think we still need to figure out if the commercial vehicle situation is gonna fix the other situation, so I'm not gonna give,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so, go ahead.
I agree with the 50%, but I think Mr. Kerr gets a really good point. I could probably fit 20 vehicles in my backyard
I think
if I
I've
were to
seen
pay
that.
50% of it.
I've seen it in your yard.
So I think that we would have to cap the vehicles in tandem with doing the percentage.
Dean, can you comment on that?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a concern about the number of vehicles, because vehicles come in different shapes and sizes, and, you know, is that a fair way to do it? So if I have a big truck and I can fit 5 big trucks, or I can fit 10 little VWs, I mean, is it, you know, 5 VWs versus 5 trucks? It's a different measurement. So I've never heard of anyone limiting the number of cars, and it's very difficult to justify that. I think it's easier to justify the impervious area, because now we're talking about runoff impacting neighbors. When you start saying you can only have a certain number of vehicles back there, then you're starting to impact whether or not they have a right to go out and buy a vehicle, you know, and park it at their homestead. I'd have to look into it to see if anyone else has done that, but I have a little bit of a concern about that.
Mr. Crowhurst, with all due respect, in my HOA where I live, I can't get a semi parked in front. It's a vehicle, but I can't park a semi in front of my home. I just can't do that. So that is a restriction on a vehicle. It's a vehicle.
Right, but that's a contractual restriction based upon an HOA declaration. Everybody that buys in there agrees that the declaration, the terms of that contract are going to bind them.
Correct, but I agree that I think that can be regulated. City manager, what is the best, or what is your recommendation? What's the easiest to enforce?
Sorry. So I do think that recommendation, I think Dean should have to study that a little bit more, because we don't even know if Virginia allows us to do that. But from an enforcement standpoint, it'd probably be easier to enforce how many cars you have in the backyard, right? You just count it. And if it's more than that, then you issue a notice of violation, assuming we can actually gain access to see it, right? Versus doing the measurement of the, you know, the pervious versus impervious. It's actually easier to enforce that. I just don't know if it's legal. I agree with the city attorney. I'm not sure it's actually legal to do that, but it'd be easier to enforce.
So if I could just comment, for contract law, you can pretty much do whatever you guys want to contract, as long as it's not illegal. When you start imposing, use the police powers to impose on people and their property rights, then you start impacting the U.S. Constitution in particular. So what is the rational reason for doing this? I mean, I think it would survive scrutiny for that on that, but what is the reason we would do for limiting the number of cars? I mean, what's the rational basis for doing that? I mean, I understand limiting the impervious area. I understand limiting the number of cars in the front yard because it's an eyesore, and the whole idea of zoning is to preserve the property values of adjoining properties. But now we're talking about a backyard, which is arguably not noticeable from the street. It's noticeable by neighbors, but what is the justification for limiting the number versus limiting the area that they can park on?
I think it would be the same language you just stated, the quality of life and the property value. If you sell your home and someone comes and buys your home and you see that there's 30 vehicles in the back, it's going to impact the quality of life and also the runoff as well in the environment. So I think that in itself is the issue.
Well, when you talk, if I can comment here, when you talk about limiting the number of vehicles, I think that limiting the amount of impervious surface in the backyard will itself limit the number of vehicles.
I agree, but I would think the 50% would be high. I think you could still park on 50% of the backyard, probably 10 or 12 vehicles. I would think you could. So, but I don't know. I mean, if that's, I think we could start off there and see if that, maybe if it's a major issue long term. Because I get your point.
What if you decide to start off with maybe 30% of the rear yard for vehicle parking and no more than 50% of the entirety of the rear yard for impervious area? That allows them to make a decision whether they want that garage to be 30% or the parking to be 30% and the other one to be 20%. Bear in mind also that a patio is an impervious area as well. So if people have patios, that's going to impact the area they can park on. So it might, maybe something like 30%. However, the total impervious area cannot exceed X percent. Because 50% is a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, we saw that picture that Laura showed us, and there were probably, 10, 15 cars parked back there, and eyeballing it, it looked like about 50% of the backyard was used for parking.
yeah.
I can get behind what Dean said.
Huh?
I can get behind Dean's suggestion. 30% for parking, 50% impervious.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And then,
what's the other counties doing, like Prince William County? When you extend a driveway, what's their recommendation or like their requirement for percentage?
For backyard or for driveway?
Or just driveway extension? Because they have this whole storm management and they incorporate that into the driveway extension.
Okay,
Percentage of the whole lot. I don't remember off the top of my head.
yeah, let me try to pull that up. I thought they just differentiated between driveway versus, the only jurisdiction I thought that did come total lot was Williamsburg, but let me pull up my slides if I can find them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think Prince William does that, and then Fairfax Station.
Fairfax Station HOA? Because Fairfax County doesn't.
No, the city, the Fairfax Station.
Oh, Fairfax City, okay, got it, okay.
But back to the question. So we're just talking about just backyard
Yeah.
parking, not the whole lot then.
Right, just backyard, yeah. What do you think of Dean's suggestion?
So I didn't follow his suggestion. What was-
Dean, can you repeat that again?
yeah, so if you start off, let's say you allow 30% of the rear yard to be used for parking, but a total of no more than 50% of all the impervious area in the backyard. So that includes the parking and accessory buildings and patios.
Yeah, that's fair. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Councilmember Moore?
I can accept Dean's
Yeah,
position.
okay. Dean's? I agree. Dean's, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Dean, we have a majority. Do you want to start work on the ordinance?
Well, I want to speak with Mickey because Mickey is our zoning administrator and
Yes.
she is out, won't be back until the 20th. I've talked to her before. I think she would be comfortable with this, but I'd really rather clear it with her before we start working on anything, which means that I wouldn't be able to talk to her until she gets back on the 21st.
Okay.
And so then we could work on it, but it shouldn't be that big of a deal to prepare the ordinance. It is, however, going to have to go to a planning commission and governing body public hearing because it's a zoning change. So
Yeah.
bear that in mind as well.
Sure.
So ideally, we could get it to, the planning commission public hearing next month. And it means the governing body probably here right after that. So the second meeting of March for the public hearing and then a vote in the first meeting in April. Does that sound about reasonable? Does that sound reasonable?
That sounds
That's
very
as soon as we
reasonable.
can be able to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great, Dean. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any final comments? Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, moving on to 10B. 10B is the ZOTA 23-08, two commercial vehicles associated with a home occupation. The public hearing having been held January 16th, 2024. This was pulled out of consent agenda, and I believe that Councilmember Javed would like to make a
Yeah.
public comment on this.
Thank you. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time. I think you guys discussed this last meeting. But the reason I wanted to pull out was to say why I do not agree with adding a second commercial vehicle for home businesses. So there's, I don't know if you guys read my emails, but there's a distinction between bringing a vehicle back from work and then using a commercial vehicle for the home business. So, I mean, I think the one restriction vehicle was a good balance between the home occupation side and also keeping the residential composure of the neighborhoods. And at the end of the day, it is a residential zoned area. So last thing I want to see is that the home occupation is allowed to have a second vehicle that's using it during business hours, causing more traffic, noise, disturbance, waste, and and whatever comes out with that extra vehicle. So that's my reasoning behind, or
Okay,
why I oppose the second
okay,
vehicle.
okay.
Thank you.
Are there any comments on Councilmember Javed's comments?
Just one comment. Keep in mind that already is happening, but not with many times it's not with those that have a home occupancy. A lot of our issues that have been coming with the noise and the trucks entering and leaving are with those that are not paying taxes here in Manassas Park. Keep in mind, if you own, and I grew up in a business that had a home occupation permit. I can tell you, at least in my house, my father left well in the morning when everybody else left, and he came home when everybody else came home. He wasn't leaving at, 9 o'clock at night, starting his truck, backing the truck back in. And right now, to be honest, companies that are based here in Manassas Park that have a home occupancy, they usually operate out, they keep the material in their garage. They pay taxes on the tools and everything and all the other services that they provide. And one of the reasons why Councilmember Maya brought this up and we stood behind it is that by not allowing those companies that are here that have legally operating out of Manassas Park, by not allowing them to have two, we're now penalizing them. But we're allowing those companies that aren't operating here, they're allowing their people to bring their trucks home or operating a business here without a home occupancy permit. We're allowing them to get away and not do their due diligence of pay taxes.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I recall that the spirit of fairness was one of our considerations. Yeah.
Well, you got to remember, the vehicles that are outside are just personal use, right? So they're not doing business inside the city. I mean, they might be doing business, not inside the home.
And a lot of times a home occupancy, you're not doing business inside the home. You take it elsewhere.
Well, I mean, there's home bakers, deliveries, tool, junk removal. I mean, I could name a whole list of home occupation businesses. But I'm saying the business, the commercial vehicles that are allowed are for personal use that they use to get to work and to get back home. They don't use, they might use that vehicle for business use outside the city or in the city, but it's
But they're
different
also-
than home occupation using their commercial vehicle for commercial use in that same neighborhood. You'll follow what I'm saying?
Not really, because they're still leaving, they're still coming and going with the people that are not running that are not have a home occupancy permit.
Yeah. Like I said,
And I
mean,
think, Yessie, you said even when you ran the bakery out of your house, you were limited on how many people could come to your house a day.
Yep.
Right, well, I mean, like I said, there's a reasoning, there's restrictions in residential zoned areas. It's not commercial zoned, right? So that's why there's a limit for why.
Right, and we have two, just like if you,
And they can't have two at this new law?
no, not if you have, no, the home occupant, people that have a home occupancy permit, the new law that we passed, the no commercial parking, excludes them. We've had this conversation, we started this conversation back in the summertime.
Mhm.
And that's why it was brought up, because they're excluded. Those companies that are here, that have gone and got the permit from zoning, that pay the taxes for their two commercial vehicles, they pay the taxes for whatever they're selling, they pay the taxes on the tools that they use to do their work. Like, for example, my father had to pay taxes on the hammers that he had. He had to pay taxes on the saws that he had. Right now, without us passing this, those companies that are here operating legally and paying taxes can only have one commercial vehicle. But a person that lives across the street that works for another company, he can have two commercial vehicles.
And that's not fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's fair.
We're penalizing,
Yeah.
without passing this, we are penalizing those companies that have legally continue to legally operate here in Manassas
Well,
Park.
well, Dean, if you're hearing this, why can't they have their second vehicle if it's a personal use parked on there?
Well, they can. The
I just don't understand.
commercial
Yeah.
parking restriction is for commercial vehicles. And so And so there are two separate things. One of them is a home occupation as a vehicle that's associated with that home occupation,
Right.
automatically classified as a commercial vehicle because it's associated with the business.
Right.
The other one has to do with parking based upon easily identifiable numbers, you know, or a criteria, you know, if it looks like a certain way, then it's a commercial vehicle. If it's excessive weight, it's considered a commercial vehicle. We're kind of doing apples and oranges here, but the point before was that, and I think we ought to focus more on this, is exactly what Laura was talking about. We have people paying taxes in the city who can only park one vehicle, and they're not allowed to have the two vehicles, but somebody who exports all their work can. They can bring two vehicles back. And I think that's what we need to focus on, because the discussion about the commercial vehicle parking issue, it's ancillary to it. It's not really the main focus. And I think there's some confusion between the two of them.
Well, let me, I guess, simplify the question here. A house that has a home business license allowed one, how many commercial vehicles can he park on the driveway legally?
If they have a home
Right
occupation
now,
permit?
one.
No, with the new law.
No.
Well, so there's two. So you can have two commercial vehicles.
Okay,
parked
stop
in
right there,
your
right there. All right, now we have two vehicles on
Permitted
that lot,
vehicles,
right?
permitted
So,
vehicles, I should say.
how many?
Permitted vehicle. I mean, I want to make sure we use the right definition. So a permitted vehicle can be a commercial vehicle under a certain weight. Okay, so let's just make sure it's called permitted vehicles, because that's what they are. You can have two permitted vehicles, which can be the commercial vehicles, parked overnight with the new parking ordinance, right?
Right.
But for a business license, you can only have one vehicle associated with that business, and that is automatically considered a commercial vehicle because it's associated with business.
Now, he has a second vehicle, he parks it there as well, not associated with the business. He could legally park his second commercial vehicle on the driveway, correct?
A second commercial vehicle, let's say his son lives with him and his son brings the vehicle home from work, and that's a commercial vehicle. He could park that one and the vehicle associated with the home business, both of those on the driveway.
Correct, so that's what I'm saying. So they legally can park two commercial vehicles, just like any other residence in the city.
Can I say something?
Right.
I understand your concern.
Okay, so
Dave.
that's what my point is that they could still park two commercial vehicles, so there's no favoritism going on. And one is just associated with the home business license, but they could still park two commercial vehicles on the lot.
Well, keep in mind, back in the summertime, when we were going to enforce the no commercial vehicles, that one enforcement, there was a letter at the same time sent to all the businesses that have a home license where they were informed they could only have one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the issue for us would be how do we prove that it's not associated with that business? Or they just tell us, yeah, it's not associated with this
Right.
business, but it actually is.
Well,
And now they're in violation of the code, but it's just hard for us to enforce it.
Well, you're not enforcing it. You see two commercial vehicles, there's two more.
Yeah,
commercial
but what if both of them are actually associated with the home-based business, and he's just
I
saying
mean,
that?
that's a whole different enforcement then.
But this law just cleans it
Are
up. We
you-
wouldn't be
you-
looking
Well,
for
you're
that.
enforcing
Can I
parking
ask-
or you're enforcing the
See,
home business
Councilmember
license?
Javette, can I ask you, I think I see your concern. Your concern is that it's gonna become overwhelming, it's gonna impact quality of life and property value. I don't really see that on this issue compared to the previous issue. Now, I would agree with you, if it did become a problem, it should be revisited, but I think this is gonna be, a couple dozen. I don't see it spiraling down the street, a row of,
No, I mean, that's fine. I'm just saying that they can still legally park two commercial vehicles.
like, yes.
And that's it. I mean, there is no across the street, oh, he's allowed two and I'm only allowed one. No, he could park his second commercial vehicle, whatever it may be,
Right.
on his own
Yes.
house driveway,
Yes.
period. That's it.
That's what you don't
That's
want.
my point.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, well, let's move on to the vote. That the governing body approve zoning ordinance text amendment ZOTA number 23-08 and adopt an ordinance to allow for two commercial vehicles associated with a home occupation to be parked at the premises as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oppose.
Abstain? Okay. One opposed from Councilmember Jabed. Okay, thank you. Okay, 11A, Prince William Health District Annual Funding and Service.
Good evening again. Each year, we have to sign an agreement with the Virginia Department of Health authorizing Prince William County or Prince William Health District to have services for us. Normally, it's about a 30% split on the total allocated cost. Due to some legislation, it had gone up to 45%. We were banking on that being about a $65,000 cost based on our costs from last year. Unfortunately, the total allocated amount went up quite a bit. So that then brings our cost up to $83,240. The services are the same as they had been previously. There was no change to the service agreement except the total cost.
Okay, okay, thank you.
That's all I got.
Comments or questions? Comments or, yes, sir.
Thank you, Sarah. Where are we getting the 18,000 to balance the, from what was budgeted and what is being charged?
Yeah, I can answer that. So every year, our jail costs have come way under. So when you look at all shared services, we usually come up under budget because of namely the jail costs, the juvenile. Juvenile is actually higher this year, but jails remain lower. So I don't envision us exceeding the total amount for shared services.
Thank you. Thank you.
Follow-up?
No,
No?
thank you.
Okay. Comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, thank you. The staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign an agreement with the Virginia Department of Health for funding and services of the Prince William Health Department as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, 11B, amendment to commercial vehicle ordinance, 10,000-pound cleanup. Okay, any comments or questions for, okay? Okay. The staff recommended motion is that the governing body adopt an ordinance to amend subsection E of section 24-51, parking of commercial vehicles and certain non-commercial vehicles restricted in residential zones of Article 3, parking of Chapter 24, Traffic Code of the City of Manassas Park, Virginia, to change the weight classification of commercial vehicles and permitted vehicles as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our second public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, let's move on to manager's report.
Good evening, nothing to report. You can see we added the presentations from the departments. Please let us know if you have any questions on those.
Okay, okay. Okay. We just sent you an email. Okay. Okay, we do have a closed session. Dean, would you like to read us into closed session?
I recommend the governing body go into closed meeting to discuss the performance and salary of the city manager pursuant to paragraph 1 of subsection 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia.
Do we have
Second.
a motion?
Moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. We will take a 5-minute break.